She owned 3 jets and couldn't start a fire. The broke farmer who saved her was hiding something that changed everything. The blizzard came without warning. One moment, Victoria Hargrove was cruising through the Colorado Rockies in her brand new Tesla Model X, sipping lukewarm coffee from a titanium thermos, answering emails on her phone with one thumb, while the windshield wipers worked steadily against the light flurries. The next moment, the car simply stopped. No warning chime, no dramatic beeping, no last-second alert, just sudden, absolute silence. And then the howling wind rushing in to fill it. Victoria stared at the dashboard. The battery indicator read 0. She had ignored the low charge warning 40 miles back, fully certain she would reach Vail before it became a real problem. She had a dinner reservation at 8, a property meeting at 10. Her assistant had confirmed both twice. She was wrong about all of it. Outside, the temperature was already dropping fast. Snow was falling so thick and sideways she could barely see 15 feet ahead. The pine trees lining both sides of the mountain road bent and swayed in the gusts, like they were trying to warn her. She grabbed her phone, the new one, the expensive one, and held it up. 1 bar, then half a bar, then nothing at all. She stepped out of the car. The wind hit her like a wall. Her tailored wool coat, the one she'd paid $4,000 for at a boutique in Milan, offered almost nothing against the raw cold of a Colorado mountain storm. She walked in a small circle around the Tesla, holding her phone in every direction, standing on her toes, stretching her arm as high as it would go. No signal, not even a flicker. Victoria Hargrove was worth $2.4 billion. She owned stakes in 4 tech companies, a penthouse in Manhattan, a vacation estate in the Hamptons, and yes, 3 private jets, each one staffed and ready on 24 hours' notice. She had been on the cover of Forbes twice. She had testified before Congress on digital infrastructure. She had negotiated deals that moved markets. But right now, standing completely alone on a deserted mountain road in Colorado, as the last orange light of the sun disappeared behind the ridge, she had never felt more helpless in her life. Her money was in servers and stocks and steel towers and cities far away. Out here, none of it existed. Out here, she was just a cold woman in an expensive coat, standing next to a very beautiful, very dead car. She was just starting to consider whether she should try walking when she heard it. The low, heavy rumble of an old engine coming around the bend. The truck that appeared through the snow looked like it belonged to a different century. A rusted Ford F-150, burnt orange where the paint still clung and rust brown everywhere else, rolling slowly and carefully along the icy road like it had driven this mountain 1,000 times and knew every curve by memory. Its headlights were old-fashioned and warm, cutting twin yellow beams through the white chaos of the storm. It stopped a few feet from her Tesla. The engine idled roughly. Then the driver's door swung open with a long, metallic creak, the kind of sound that said this truck had lived a full life and wasn't ashamed of it. The man who stepped out was nothing like anyone in Victoria's world. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out a worn Carhartt work jacket that had clearly seen years of actual work. The hem was caked with dried mud. His jeans were dirty. His boots were old, steel-toed, laced tight. He had dark hair with gray at the temples, a few days of stubble on a jaw that looked like it had been cut from the same granite as the mountains around them. He carried a rolled-up wool blanket under one arm like it weighed nothing at all. From the rear window of the truck, a German shepherd watched Victoria with calm, serious eyes, patient, assessing. The man looked at the Tesla, then at Victoria, then at the sky. "Car dead?" he asked. His voice was low, unhurried, a voice that had never needed to raise itself to be heard. "The battery died," Victoria said, straightening instinctively. It was a reflex she'd developed over 20 years of being underestimated in boardrooms. The slight lift of the chin, the squaring of the shoulders. "I just need a signal to call for roadside assistance." The man looked at her phone, then slowly scanned the ridgeline around them. No signal for another 12 miles in either direction on this road. "There's a dead zone through this whole section of the valley." He looked at the sky again, reading it the way she read quarterly reports. "Storms picking up speed. Another 20 minutes, and this becomes genuinely dangerous." "I can wait in my car," she said. I have water, I have... Tesla's dead, he said, simply and without cruelty. No heat, no battery. Temperatures dropping to the low teens tonight. Probably single digits by midnight with wind chill. She opened her mouth. She closed it. He was completely right, and she knew it. I'm Cole, he said, not extending a hand. Just offering the name the way you state a fact. Steady, uncomplicated. Victoria. He gave a single nod, as if her name was information received and stored. I've got heat, water, food, and a wood stove that's been burning since this morning. My place is 6 miles down the mountain. You're welcome to ride out the storm there. He glanced at the Tesla. I can call a tow service on the landline. When we get down, if the lines are still up. Victoria looked at the truck. She looked at this man, rough, quiet, smelling of pine resin and engine oil, a stranger on a mountain road in a blizzard. Every single instinct honed from years of building and protecting $1 billion empire told her to be cautious, told her to wait, told her that getting into a stranger's truck was not a calculated risk. But then the wind shrieked across the ridge with a violence that stole the breath from her lungs and drove, ice crystals against her cheeks like needles. She picked up her bag. She got in the truck. The farmhouse was 6 miles down and a world away. It sat at the base of the mountain, half hidden between a stand of snow-covered pines and a low wooden fence that lined a dark field. It was small, practical, a covered porch with a single light burning above the door, firewood stacked in neat, precise rows along the south wall, enough for months. A barn set back 50 yards with a faint, warm light spilling from beneath the door. Inside, the wood stove was already burning, throwing amber light across bare wooden walls and a plank floor worn smooth by years of use. The furniture was simple, a couch with a wool blanket folded over the arm, a wooden table with 4 chairs, 2 of which looked like they hadn't been used in a long time. Bookshelves lined the wall beside the stove. There was no smart speaker, no Ring doorbell, no television mounted to the wall, just the fire, the shelves, and the quiet. Cole handed her dry wool socks and a mug of black coffee, both appearing without her asking. Without ceremony, without any expectation of thanks. She sat by the fire and wrapped both hands around the mug. Scout, the German shepherd, circled her twice, sniffed her knee with professional thoroughness, and then lay down directly across her feet with the full weight of his body, as if she were already family. Victoria looked around the room. Something about it unsettled her, not in a threatening way, but in the way a mirror unsettles you when you see yourself more clearly than you expected. She tried Cole's landline to reach her assistant. The line was down. She tried again an hour later. Still nothing. She tried her cell at every window in the house, standing in the cold near the glass each time. Nothing. She wasn't going anywhere tonight. The storm raged for 2 full days. On the first evening, she began to notice the books. They were everywhere, and they were not the books of a simple man living a simple life. Engineering textbooks, fluid dynamics, advanced structural analysis, medical references bookmarked with torn pieces of paper, philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, Camus, Epictetus, constitutional law, a battered copy of Wilderness Medicine with its entire first chapter underlined. She pulled one from the shelf, a graduate level text on materials engineering, and found the margins covered in handwritten notes, dense, precise, analytical. The kind of notes that came from someone not just reading but thinking hard. She set it down carefully. You went to college? She asked that evening while Cole was adding wood to the stove. He paused almost imperceptibly. Yes. Where? He looked at her steadily. No embarrassment, no pride, just the plain fact of it. MIT for my undergraduate degree, engineering, then Johns Hopkins. Graduate program in biomedical systems design. The fire crackled between them. You have a graduate degree from Johns Hopkins, Victoria said slowly, and you're running a cattle farm in the Colorado mountains. I chose this, he said. Quiet. Absolute. Not a single note of apology in his voice. She wanted to push further. She always pushed further. It was how she had built everything she owned. But something in the way he said it made her stop. There was no wound in those words, no bitterness, no performance of peace. He had simply made a choice, and he had made his entire life agree with it. That was something she hadn't seen in a very long time. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch with Scout stretched along the back cushion behind her head and stared at the orange light on the ceiling from the stove's grate, and thought about the last time she had chosen something because she actually wanted it. Not because it was strategic, not because it would grow the portfolio, not because it would prove something to someone who had once doubted her. She couldn't remember. On the second morning, while Cole was out checking on the cattle, Victoria found the photograph. It sat in a simple wooden frame on the shelf near the window, almost hidden behind a stack of books. A younger version of Cole, clean-shaven, wearing scrubs, standing in a hospital corridor with bright lights behind him. His arm was around a woman with dark hair and a wide, easy smile. In front of them, held up by both of them at once, was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin, so big it took over her entire face. All three of them were laughing at something just outside the frame. Victoria stood there holding the photograph for a long time. She put it back exactly where she found it. When Cole came in, stomping snow from his boots, she was sitting by the fire with her coffee. He glanced at the shelf. He knew. She could tell by the way he went still for just a moment before moving to the stove. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, sitting across from her and staring into the fire, hands wrapped around his own mug, he spoke. Her name was Diane, my daughter was Emma. She was 7. A long pause. The fire filled the silence. Black ice. A mountain road about 20 miles north of here. 4 winters ago, Victoria didn't move. I was in San Francisco, he continued. His voice even. Not flat, not broken, just honest. We were closing a Series C round. $40 million. I got the call during the term sheet signing. He looked at the fire. I made it back in time to say goodbye to Diane. Emma was gone before I landed. The room was so quiet that Victoria could hear the snow against the window. I finished the deal, Cole said. I don't know why. Habit maybe, or shock. 3 weeks later, I dissolved my position in the company, liquidated everything I needed to, and bought this land. He looked at her then, directly, without flinching, without asking for anything. I needed to find out if I could be a decent human being before I tried to be anything else again. He nodded once toward the shelf. That's the secret. The road was plowed by the following noon. By 2 o'clock, Victoria's assistant had arrived in an SUV, with a tow truck behind him and 2 members of her security team following in a second vehicle. She met them at the end of Cole's driveway, and sent the security team back without a word. Scout sat beside her in the snow, tail sweeping a slow arc, watching the vehicles with calm indifference. Victoria turned to Cole, who stood on his porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, not guarded, just still. The way the mountain was still now that the storm had passed. My company has been developing a rural emergency infrastructure initiative for the past 18 months, she said. Satellite relay towers for dead zones, automated emergency shelters on high-risk mountain roads, AI-assisted weather routing that can actually predict microstorm conditions in terrain like this. She met his eyes. The engineering has been solid, but I've been missing someone who understands both the system side and the human side. What it actually feels like to be stranded. What decisions people make under pressure. What these roads do to families. Cole said nothing. He listened. I'm not asking you to leave this, she said, gesturing at the farm, the pines, the mountain behind him. I'm asking if you'd be willing to consult, remotely, on your terms. She paused. Your work could make sure that what happened to your family doesn't happen to someone else's. For a long moment, Cole looked past her at the mountain, at the road that curved up into the tree line, at the place where the storm had come from. Then he looked down at Scout, then at Victoria. Send me the specs, he said quietly. She drove off the mountain that afternoon, back toward the world she had built. The towers and the spreadsheets and the meetings and the deals, but she wasn't the same person who had driven up it 3 days before. She had arrived with $2.4 billion and the deep, unexamined certainty that resources meant safety. She left understanding something no boardroom had ever been able to teach her. The most capable person in any crisis is never the wealthiest one. It's the one who has already lost everything that mattered, and chose to keep showing up anyway. Cole never left his mountain, but his designs, his quiet, precise, hard-won engineering, were eventually embedded into a system that covered 64 miles of high-risk Colorado mountain roads. Over the following 3 years, that system was credited with directly preventing 9 weather-related fatalities. He never spoke about it publicly. He never wanted to. Scout knew. The mountains knew. And some nights, when the snow came down soft and the wood stove burned low and the whole world outside went white and quiet, Cole would sit in his chair by the fire and look at the photograph on the shelf and feel, for the first time in a long time, that the weight he carried had finally begun to mean something. That was enough. That had always been enough. The person who saves you is rarely who you expected, and sometimes the one who appears to have nothing is carrying the only thing that ever truly mattered.